about that, about awakening, and also about these present times, about the great possibilities, but also the challenges that we find in our present times. And when we say present times, of course, it's this moment right now, because this is all what exists, in fact, the present moment. But there are many who call this period of time now, we can say in the past 40 years, or even some even think a little longer than that, 100 years. And some call this period of time for the New Age or the Aquarian era. And the school talks a lot about Aquarian era also. And we won't go much into this astrological or cosmological aspect of these eras and all of that, because that's not the point now. But we do know for sure that the Earth, and not only the Earth, us, ourselves, and the whole nature gets a lot of influence of the moon, the sun, and the planets. And that is, of course, proven and it's known. The sun and the moon, they are responsible for pretty much everything in the cycles of the Earth, and also in cycles of creation and our own cycles also. So what is happening now is that we are going through a period of some changes in these influences, and we have been experiencing that in the past years, in the past decades. And we not only see it in society and around ourselves, but also and especially within ourselves and in our private lives. And there is a very big impulse right now for the new, for that what is new, for getting open to what is new, and to understand that some cycles need to be left behind us, that they served their purpose, but now it's time to go to another step. And that talking especially in our individual lives as human beings. So there is this impulse for what's new, for new discoveries, for change, especially. But when we talk about that, we talk especially about inner change, because everything that changes, especially if we want a change outside, we have first to be that change. So the change has to happen within ourselves first. And if we think about these impulses, this wonderful moment that we are going through, and these higher values for what's new and for change, we can talk about especially and mainly about three main values that we can put together in a triangle, that it's also called the triangle of this time, or Aquarian triangle, that is basically a equilateral triangle. And one side is that what is love, and the other side is freedom, and the third side is oneness or unity. And those three sides, they have the same size. So nothing is, one side is not more important than the other. And they all make together one body, one manifestation, one triangle. So the impulse for love, freedom, and unity, that is basically the impulse of this time. And again, when we talk about these impulses, when we talk about this triangle with love, freedom, and unity, we are talking about values that are higher, that are of a higher manifestation than what we usually know for love, freedom, and unity. And that is what is very, very special about this period, these times now. So love, to begin with, goes above the love that we know as a feeling, the love that we personally feel, to a love that is universal, a love that has no preferences, a love that knows no separation. And that is that what is behind all creation. It is actually the power that is behind all life. It's the universal love. It's the love and the power behind all that lives in this cosmos, in this planet, and everywhere, all life itself. So that's universal love. And then when we mention freedom as one of the sides of this triangle, that is the freedom that it's not just a concept or an idea of breaking free, but it is more than that. It is a freedom that comes from inside. It is a freedom that starts deep within ourselves. And we are going to talk a little more about that too, a little further on. But it is the freedom that is born within us and that then can go outside of us and manifest itself outside of us. And that is the freedom that when it is really born within us, nothing else from whoever it comes or from whatever it comes, nothing else can take it away from us. That is the real freedom or the real value of freedom. And the third aspect, that is oneness and unity, it's really being into that oneness with no separation anymore. So these three values, they are present and they speak to us. This love, universal love, this freedom and this oneness are values that we already have within us. That's why we feel so deeply called, especially at this time, to make that come true. Because it is something that we know already. We know from the bottom of our being that is real, that is something I know. But if we really look at our lives and we think about, for example, oneness or unity, if we think about that, we can think, well, that's kind of, I don't really experience that in reality, because everything I experience in my daily life is based on separation. We are separated from each other. There is separation between what we think and what we feel, or how we would like things to be and how they really are. There is separation, for example, between, inside of us, between what is feminine and what is masculine, for example. And that is a very important example, because independent on our gender identity, we all, as human beings, we experience a separation or a disharmony between that what is the masculine aspect within us and the feminine aspect within us. And using that as an example, of course, we can think about how much we have been taught for so long, how much the masculine aspect is being the intellect, the reasoning, or even the pursuit for perfection, that are all very masculine. Intellect, perfection, how much that has been very much valued throughout time, throughout generations. While the feminine aspect, which is the intuition of the heart, which is the warmth and patience, how much these feminine aspects, they have been underestimated or undervalued. And we were taught like that. We learned like that. Society lives and exists like that. So what is masculine intellect is right and good. And what is the intuition telling us is, it's almost like silly. We were taught to believe that what the intuition that comes from within us is telling us is basically silly. We should not listen to that, because that's not, it's silly. It's not really to be important. While that it is very, very important that we keep balance between those two aspects within us. It is very, very important. So that it's not to be only the feminine or the masculine, but that they can find cooperation and neutrality together. And so that is one of the aspects that show how we live and experience life in a kind of separated state, in separation, even though we have that longing for oneness and for unity. And so, if we then talk about awakening, if we try to find out what awakening really is, it's something that couldn't be more simple. It's something that it's basically to become conscious. We live for the biggest part of our experiences and our lives and our hours, we live life in a very automatic kind of way. Things just come and go, and sometimes we don't even remember exactly what we were doing because we are very little conscious of things we do daily. A lot of what we do, it's very automatic. While that awakening, it's exactly to become conscious, to become more present in everything we do, or for the biggest part of that what we do, or at least try to be more conscious of not only these automatic cycles that we are caught by, but also this equilibrium that we were just talking about now. So it is being conscious of that is very important, that we awake and can see a little bit better and a little bit clearer how the cycles of what we feel, what we think, and how we react in life, how these cycles come and go, and how and where is it that we find a little more balance, and where is it that we don't find that balance, so that we can learn to know ourselves a little better. So that is one point that is important. But the second aspect, the second point that is even more important than to be aware or more conscious of these cycles in our lives is to be aware of this, what we already bring within ourselves. That even though we can see that things are not really in balance, and we suffer for that, and we struggle many times, that we can remember also that the true being, the true I, the true core and essence of ourselves is already within us, and it's love and perfection and harmony, and above all, unity. So if we remember that, and if we connect to that core in our hearts, then we can experience the awakening fully. That it's not just an observation of disharmony or these processes of the ego and everything that happens that brings us pain even, but it's to go above that and to remember that we bring already this power within us that is in itself love, freedom, unity, and male and feminine and masculine in one neutrality. And so that is what we truly are. And that is where the answers and the direction that we take in life should come from. That is the compass, the real compass that takes us really somewhere. So if we go back to this awakening that we just talked about, from getting more conscious, getting more aware of things, and especially aware of this within. If we today, as human beings that live now, we have great possibilities in these times, in this, as it's called, Aquarian era or age. So we are going to talk a little bit about these possibilities and also the challenges of these times. And so now, as we talked a little bit before, there are all these impulses in the atmosphere everywhere. We feel it within, we feel it outside, without, and these impulses for awakening, for a consciousness that is a little more awake, a consciousness that is not so caught by all these egocentric processes, but a consciousness that really sees from a different angle and can also experience life from a different angle. So one of the big impulses of this era is for turning inwardly. And by turning and helping with this looking within instead of looking outside all the time, from that possibility, we get to something very, very interesting that has changed a lot in the past years, is how we relate to the truth, how we relate to that what we call faith. Before, faith was very much related to believing in something outside of us, believing in something as an institution, as in a master, or in philosopher, or in a organization, for example. While that now, in the past decades, that has been changing a lot. So faith in that what we believe in, it's something that has to come from within. We have to feel that that makes sense for us, that whatever is happening, or we listen to, or we watch to, that has to resonate with this reality, with this real being that we bring within us. So it's not anymore a dogma or a rule that comes from outside and you have to believe in this. But on the opposite of that, we are being stimulated even to really look within and to find that truth and the resonance within us, so we can reach that power that is already in our hearts. Another important aspect is the impulse for developing the intuition. So the intellect that we were just talking a little bit about has been very much on the spotlight, and everything that is good and valuable comes from that intellect, from that search for perfection. While that now we have been very much aware and stimulated to listen much more and develop much more that what is the intuition. The intuition that comes not from a feeling or an emotion just, but the intuition that comes from the heart. And based on that intuition that now is being much more valued, not that the masculine aspect is not valued, but the intuition has to be valued, so we can learn that the truth also comes from there, It comes from intuition. And when this intuition can work together with the comprehension, with the head, then we can reach this neutrality or this balance or this unity, this oneness. So we talked about the faith, that it's more turned inwardly. The truth has to resonate within. That's very Aquarian. We talked about the intuition that has to be more valued, that has to grow, that has to be heard. That's another, the second aspect. And another one that it's related to freedom, and that is very important as well, is that by looking within, by being stimulated to looking within ourselves, we also get the opportunity of learning to know ourselves, of not learning to know ourselves in just what we like or not like, or what is it that is gives me pleasure, or my talents or not. It's not about that. It is really the self knowledge of how is it that I feel in this situation, or why is this always happening? Why some situations, they keep on repeating and repeating themselves over and over again. So by gaining more self-knowledge, by looking within, then we can really say that there is freedom. It's only by getting to that insight, that awareness of who we truly are, that we can be really free. And freedom couldn't be more Aquarian, doesn't get more Aquarian than freedom. And but the freedom that comes from that really looking within, and not the freedom as just I'm free to do whatever I want or to think whatever I want. It's something a little deeper than that we talk about. And another last and great possibility of these times is the sense of compassion, that it's very, very present in this world right now. And of course, we know all resistances and all the negative reactions, but we are talking about impulses, and we are talking about possibilities that are out there for us. And the possibility for compassion is the possibility of really from within being there for each other, because everything we do in a process of getting more and more conscious, in a process of looking more and more within ourselves, it's not only for us, it's not only for our personal life, it's not only for our soul, or it is also for others. So everything that happens here inside our hearts, every light that we get through in a situation, that we got a little more aware, that we got a little more conscious, that light, that transformation that happens in us, it is also a power, not only by example, because we also become an example to others, but energetically, we can feel, people around us can feel that there is something different, that there is something of a different, energy that it's happening, and that is what is real love. We are not giving love to one or another person but we are, just by going through this process and looking within ourselves and being more conscious and aware, we are already doing, we are already releasing this power of love, because this doesn't depend on our consciousness, it doesn't depend on our will, it just happens because it is the law of love. The law of love is to give itself, it's to be spread. So in short, we talked a little bit now about these possibilities of these times that are great. And first, the faith that it's inwards, the faith that is born here. And then we talked about intuition that has been getting more and more attention and value, which is a great possibility. It's a great offer of these times. We talked also about the freedom that comes from self-knowledge, free from inside out. And we talked about compassion. We talked about universal love that comes from this compassion, from awareness. And so shortly also, I would like to go through that what we can say there are challenges, or that what is difficult, what we can meet as challenges in these times. And just to say it shortly, everything what we can meet as a challenge, it's very important that we are aware of this, all of us, is that it comes from a resistance. Either a resistance that is, of course, not coming from this core, from this essence within us, but it's coming from the ego. It's a resistance that comes from fear of change, for change, that comes from shame or embarrassment, or or just unconsciousness that we are not very conscious of. We don't even really know where these resistances come from. But challenges come from resistance. And if what we have experienced a lot in these days as a challenge is that what can happen is that resisting the development of a more intuitive intelligence, resisting the development of this intuition that we talked about, what can happen is that there is a development even stronger of the intellect. And there we can see that what happens is a polarization of ideas. Groups that, instead of bringing and coming together, they separate ideas and they fight amongst each other. So inflexibility and polarization comes from resistance, the resistance for a more intuitive truth. Another challenge that is very common is the resistance of looking within ourselves. While we resist, there is a tendency to point fingers, and that is very common too. We experience a lot that what is called scapegoating, that is pointing fingers, so blaming others, because we don't look really within ourselves. Then we just have the tendency of pointing fingers and blaming others, and that is of course coming from a resistance. And something also that happens a lot, and that we all have maybe experienced that and seen maybe in the world or in our own lives, is that what is freedom, but the freedom without responsibility. Freedom that doesn't come from that inner place, from learning to know yourself, but the freedom that comes from a superficial idea of how things should be. And in there, we meet a lot of chaos and degradation and everything else than freedom. So that what we long for, that is love, that is unity, that is freedom, like we said in the beginning, we end up resisting that and facing challenges and facing suffering that come exactly from those resistances of the ego. So yeah, I would like just to, before finishing this first part, I would like just to say that there are great possibilities out there. And the awakening that we talked in the beginning, it has to come from a necessity of the heart above everything else. And that awakening is the first step, and maybe the most important step also, in a path of transformation, in a path that we look more and more inwardly, and where the whole thought life, feelings, emotional life, and our actions, they get transformed. And we know that there are moments when we are more awake. There are moments that we just can't see a thing. And that is just how it is. That is also something very important, is that once we have awakened or gotten a little more conscious, that is not a state that stays and doesn't change anymore. It can be that we fall asleep again, and it can be that we get a little more conscious and aware again. And that is just how it is. And that is just how this whole process works. But that what we should never forget is this true being that we are, and that doesn't leave us, and that keeps on calling us for transformation, keeps on calling us for love and for compassion and for oneness and unity.